Vì vậy, ngay bây giờ, hãy cùng đến với một chủ đề rất thú vị. So, come to the next session would be the panel with a very interesting topic, crypto in capital structures. So, as we know, as digital assets redefine capital markets, it's vital to explore how tokenization and blockchain finance intersect with institutional investment. And with our panelists today, let's welcome to the stage for the sharing of Mr. Ben, Managing Director from HashKey. Come to the stage. And next, come back to our stage would be Mr. Nicholas C. Tong, Country Lead Base. And welcome Mr. Craig, Chairman from Mirac Holdings. And our moderator would be Mr. Johan from also Chairman from HSC. Let's welcome them to the stage and a big applause for our panelists. Và một tràng pháo tay cho phần chia sẻ tiếp theo đến từ những diễn giả hết sức uy tín với tầm nhìn và tầm quốc tế.
We're missing Nicholas. Nicholas, are you here? Okay. Yeah, I don't think we can find Nicholas, so we should go ahead and start our panel because we don't have a lot of time, and it's very close to lunchtime now, so we have a little bit of attrition, and so I'm gonna talk fast. I'm gonna hopefully have enough time to raise some very critical issues or ideas in our topic. And our topic, I picked a topic, and it's called cryptos in capital structures, but really I was referring to crypto treasury companies. And I think we have seen the establishment and development of some of these. I think there are now more than 100 crypto companies in the US alone, and there are more in other parts of the world as well. So what do crypto treasury companies do? Basically, their balance sheet is comprised of either in some parts or for the most part, their assets in crypto. And so I think one of the biggest examples, I think maybe the first crypto treasury company that was established was called MicroStrategy. Actually, MicroStrategy was a software company that was established many years ago. And since I think 2020 or so, they have basically become a crypto company by using their cash on the balance sheet to buy Bitcoin. And so now I believe that they are the biggest crypto treasury company in the world. Welcome back, Nicholas. You missed.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, no problem at all. We don't want to bother introducing ourselves because that's just wasting a lot more time. So I wanted to dig right into a business model or a treasury management or balance sheet management model, and that's called a crypto treasury company. And we started out with a strategy. Now it's called Strategy. And the guru who drove the whole concept of treasury, Bitcoin treasury company is Michael Saylor. And so I wanted to understand more, and I have tried to learn how MicroStrategy has set up its balance sheet as such, beginning back in 2020 by buying a significant amount of Bitcoins. They continue to buy Bitcoins to this day, and I think there was a big announcement last week that they bought into a bigger amount of Bitcoins. They are probably the biggest crypto treasury company or Bitcoin treasury company that holds Bitcoins. So I want to understand how they came up with that business model. And one of the things that I have noticed is that some of the tools that Michael Saylor has used to continue building up the size of Strategy's balance sheet is to issue some capital products other than traditional straight equity. So we have seen preferred equity, we have seen convertible bonds, but all of these products carry some very unconventional features, including zero coupon for the bonds, I think, and there's no expiration date, and they are called perpetual preferred equity, for example. So and this question is open to all panelists, and we can discuss it. I guess we can't go too much in depth, but can you comment on the capital products that MicroStrategy has invented, basically using traditional finance products, but coming up with ways to produce these products to raise capital for his balance sheet, for Strategy's balance sheet? Maybe Rick or Ben or Nicholas, which one would volunteer to go first?
Sure. So I think Saylor's idea there was very much to turn the sort of P&L volatility that you would have from holding Bitcoin into balance sheet vol, right? And then to make that a product itself. And so, like in how he's doing it, I think creating the volatility as a feature and not a bug, and then creating structures around it, some of which you mentioned, right? The zero coupon. He's also in the bonds themselves. He's laddered the maturities, so there's little or much less risk of kind of forced selling. And so, obviously that's been the most successful, and we've now seen ETH and Solana and other kind of copycats there. I think the main difference when we think about, for example, the ETH or Solana products is that it's much more of an investment in the roadmap and the capabilities, right? There's like legally a lot of the stuff around staking and things like that is less clear, speaking, I guess, from a US tax perspective. So,
Nick?
Yeah, I think, everyone knows like Saylor's longing Bitcoin, right? But I think what is really interesting when you have a treasury of that size is the type of treasury management methods you could wrap around that. For example, via options, you could have a delta neutral strategy. You could just like scalp gamma, and there are so many ways you can like play with derivatives on the Bitcoin that they have in different market conditions, right? And I think one of the reasons why he's so bold with just buying Bitcoin is just because Bitcoin, unlike the stock market, is something that's super predictable. Like you know the total supply, and you know the amount that it takes to corner the market, right? And so with that you can go to any kind of like investor in the world and tell them, I know what's going to happen when supply hits this, circulating supply hits this amount, and there's a squeeze, right? And so that gives him a very unique kind of like pitch.
Ben, is this a good thing or a bad thing waiting to happen?
No, I think it's actually really important for the industry, right? One side of things is, obviously there's the risk element is, if these large companies continue to accumulate holdings, does that create some type of risk, right? So there's that side of things. I mean, one way that I think about it, which I think is quite interesting, is like if you look at each bull cycle of crypto, right? You have to have net inflows into the market, right? So if you look at like the past few cycles, you have new users coming to crypto exchanges, buying crypto, and that's serving as one part of the net inflow. I think what we have seen
when you are saying crypto, you're referring specifically to Bitcoin,
Ethereum, right? I would say like the majors, right? Let's say these majors, and I think what we have seen different in this from like the HashKey perspective. I think what we have seen very very different in this cycle is the fact that you have more like institutional players, including brokers, who are now allowing their in certain markets like Hong Kong, for example, who are now allowing their typical retail securities traders to to be able to have access to buying and selling Bitcoin directly, right? So that's independent of like the buying like equity in treasury companies. So I think one of the big things about this this particular cycle is the flow that's coming into the market is not restricted to just like the typical like crypto traders, but now it's expanding more into like the traditional equities buyers. So I think that's really important, and I think you're also seeing that in the digital asset treasury companies, right? DATs, which is what they're called. I think that's another good example of this is now a new vehicle that previous money that had not come into crypto is able to come into crypto in a through a different type of structure. So I think it's good for the industry in terms of having like a more diversified flow of capital coming in for this cycle.
Yeah, so Michael Saylor is not is not the king of the road anymore, because we have the ETFs, we have a few other sizable or going to be sizable crypto treasury companies coming out in the market and buying in as well. So he's got to be careful, I think, and from a traditional equity investor's point of view, and looking at strategies, business model, the next round of issuance is always at a higher price than the previous one. And then gradually there will be products like, as I mentioned, zero coupon bonds and without an expiring date. And so I think the equity investor who go in, I think in the beginning there were some who came in with the attraction of earning a dividend rate of 9%, for example, or I guess when the USD interest rates were lower, they didn't have to pay that high of a rate, but nowadays they can pay 90%. Or they can, I think, because of the arbitrage window is closing up, I think it will be less and less attractive to the next round of buyers, whether they prefer equity or convertible bonds in the future, in order for strategy to tap in. Is that a risk, major risk to investors in the market, in this business?
I mean, I think there's always going to be risk in getting exposure to Bitcoin specifically. Like it depends what your horizon is, right? If you're a short-term buyer and short-term holder, of course there's going to be short-term risk. But I think in this industry, like if you look at any of the the long-term holders, generally, it's been a decent long-term investment, right? But it does have a high like risk return profile. I think what is quite interesting about what strategy is doing specifically for BTC is they have over time, I think over the last year, right, they've started to launch other types of products, right? So I think if you look at it, like one of them is like Strife, and then another one is Strike, right? So you have these other types of products.
Three of them, I think. Yeah,
so you have now this like diverse range of financial instruments that some are like total return, right? So for example, just the equity of MicroStrategy, for example, it would be kind of like total return. But then on some of those other products, right, like Strife and Strike, they're actually more just like kind of pure dividend plays, right? One of them has like a conversion feature. But I think these are interesting, like for certain types of investors that have different level of risk tolerance. I think they're being creative in terms of designing different types of products that suit different types of investors.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is Michael Saylor actually came out and said he will never sell his Bitcoins or strategies Bitcoins. Now that's I think that's a weird situation to be in terms of how to counterbalance against the liquidity of the underlying asset, because there may be liquidity in the issued products, but there is going to be a much lower level of liquidity for the underlying asset, which is Bitcoin or Ethereum for that matter. But I think Bitcoin is a much more severe product in terms of its liquidity in the future. So is that also a risk for strategy to manage? Because they will have, on the one hand, because of the restrictions on the or the limitation rather on the availability of the underlying asset, and because of the institutional buyers jumping in to mop up, and including the funds as well as the sovereign entities jumping in to mop up all the liquidity in Bitcoin in the market. Now, liquidity of the underlying asset is going to go lower and lower, and the price will go higher and higher, and so that I think some traditionalists have even come out and called that a Ponzi scheme. What do you say?
I mean, there's always going to be risk like that when a single entity holds that much Bitcoin. I mean, the good thing going for Saylor is, I mean, you have a very, very friendly U.S. administration that, just...
For now.
For now, right? And that's kind of like the risk. I think we saw what happened with Bill Huang and that whole like unraveling, and it can unravel super quickly when one...
which product did he
Bill Huang, Green Seal.
I know Bill Huang, but I just don't remember which product he speculated.
So
in.
he kind of like engineered like a intentionally or unintentionally like a gamma squeeze when he entered a lot of like options on, I think it was like discovery options, discovery stock, and a lot of like these Chinese companies as well. And so that pushed up the prices. But when the option trade started to unravel, like he went bust. And I think that's kind of a risk that I think we've seen just one player holding a high concentration in any asset. And you never know what the risk event could be, right? It could be like the refinancing of the bonds. And you never know like how that interest rate is gonna like turn out. Maybe there could be collateral damage from another like financial impact. So I feel like the risk is always there, right?
Yeah, so you mentioned the refinancing of the bond. That's one of the major risks. Obviously, volatility in the price of Bitcoin is first and foremost the biggest risk. But of course, with MicroStrategy now being one of the biggest whales in the market, he probably has the market cornered to that extent, and maybe he runs a lower risk. If he doesn't sell, then he should be okay. But I think sooner or later there will be a dry up of Bitcoins in the market, and so it will be in the hands of the institutional investors. And like you said, Nick, if there is a major event or something that crashes the price of Bitcoin, let's say quantum computing comes out with something that challenges Bitcoin in the future, is that risk going to blow up the market?
Yeah, I mean, the risk could come, I mean, in the financial market, risk can come from really anywhere, right? Could be a black swan event.
Anyone want to comment on the risk side more? Should we move on?
Yeah, I mean, there's always risk, right? I mean, people bring up the the quantum computing risk factor for for Bitcoin, but I think there's already a lot of like, if you look at some of the the core development team around Bitcoin, and then also around some of the other layer ones, there's already like an awareness of how you build quantum resistance, for example. So I think some of like the technology risks people are trying to do their best to to address in advance. Okay,
let's move on a little bit. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with your point on the technology risk, and then I think Saylor's view is, as with most of the things he does, this is a feature, not a bug, right? He's, to your point, he's a big holder. He and the other treasury companies are buying way more Bitcoin than is being mined, and that squeeze, if it eventually happens, is to their benefit.
And obviously they don't only hold Bitcoin; they also hold Ethereum. And there's another guy named Tom Lee who came out with BitMine, which is an Ethereum treasury company. And from what I understand, their business model is very similar to strategy in that respect. And I think they hold probably almost all of its assets in Ethereum. But Ethereum works slightly differently than Bitcoin. Do you think that's something that can be explored further in this business?
Yeah, I think if you look at like ETH as a capital asset, it's actually much different than BTC, right? Because you could stake Ether. So in terms of like the underlying, so if you look at like MicroStrategy's core KPI, like BTC yield, right? I think like most recently, I can't remember the numbers. Like it's always changing, but I think like quarter to date or something like that. It's like 4 to 5%, right? In terms of the BTC yield. I think with Ether, you get the staking yield in addition to like the kind of like the new issuance, the new issuance yield. So I think if you look at if you look at in I think it may or may not be public, so I can't say it, but you've seen like some of the ETFs around ETH also experimenting with adding like staking into the underlying yield. So I think companies like BitMine, actually, if you look at it like over the past like 5 days, their stock has been crazy, right? I think BitMine in the last like 5 days is up like I think it's up 50%, right? Just in terms of the equity. Whereas you look at like the underlying price of ETH, it's probably in the last 5 days maybe been up maybe 20% or so, right? So it's quite interesting, right? I think there's a lot of interest in the market around ETH potentially outperforming BTC, over the next 10 to 12 months. And if you believe in that, if you believe in that thesis, stocks like BitMine are it's not financial advice, right? But stocks like BitMine are essentially kind of like a levered play on top of it, right? And then you can see that over the last 5 days as an example, right? ETH up maybe about 20%, but then you have BitMine up around 50 to 60%. So it's quite interesting. You have that for stocks like the ETH treasury companies like BitMine. They're kind of like a levered play for the equity markets on ETH, and then also potentially in terms of their ETH yield, they're probably able to generate additional yield from the staking as well.
Educate me a little bit in terms of how these treasury companies, crypto treasury companies, create cash flow for themselves, and ultimately they have to pay out dividend to shareholders.
I mean, if you look at like MicroStrategy, they don't sell Bitcoin, right?
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
So how do they create cash flow? How do they create income?
I think the way I think if you look at their like metrics, right? If you look at their financial metrics, they focus more on like BTC yield per, the amount of BTC that they're able to accumulate per share. Right?
Yeah, there's a yield for sure. There's a yield, but no cash flow from what I got. Other than from the proceeds from the issuances. Yeah. So as long as they are able to continue issuing new products for their balance sheet, then they will have some cash flow. I mean, they don't have to use all of those proceeds to buy cryptos, right? They can use some of it for their cash flow. As a matter of fact, I think there was one tranche where they issue new shares to pay dividend to old shareholders, to existing shareholders. So that is really mind-boggling to me as a traditional finance guy. And not to mention the fact that in a lot of markets, including Vietnam, it's not a legal thing to do. As a traditional company, you cannot issue new shares. You use that proceeds to pay dividend. So you guys are all nodding your heads, but
I feel like they could sell put options if they're so bullish, or they could just loan out their Bitcoin and get some sort of like small yield for operational costs. But kind of like financial engineering, right? Like, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the risks, we have already laid out some of the risks here for the audience to kind of understand and recognize on the business model of these companies. However, the concept of crypto treasury company now expands to more than just the likes of Strategy and BitMine, but traditional companies like Tesla, like the Trump media company have also accumulated or begun to accumulate Bitcoin. And so do you think that this is a fad because of, as Nick mentioned, they are in the right environment in terms of political standing, particularly in the US. But do you think it's a fad? Do you think at one point, or do you think it will be proliferating in the future to a lot of other companies, including traditional companies, Apple, Google, Amazon, what have you? Are they already companies that have accumulated Bitcoins? Do you know?
You're actually already seeing it in a diverse number of companies, right? So, for example, in Hong Kong, where HashKey is headquartered, I think we just publicized like a few days ago that actually some of the publicly listed companies in Hong Kong, they're acquiring like Bitcoin or acquiring Ether through some of the licensed exchanges like HashKey, right? So I wouldn't say the tech companies, yeah, I'm sure they're looking at, but you actually see a lot of the more like traditional companies also doing that. That specific purchase, I think, that was like a pharmaceutical company that was buying crypto to diversify their treasury holdings, right? So I think you're starting to see like more of a diverse range of companies adding it to their balance sheet.
That's slightly different than what Strategy and Bitmine are doing, because they're just buying and holding, right? Or maybe they can trade too, they can buy and sell, but they don't come out and create other products for their balance sheet with the underlying crypto assets that they have acquired. So I think with that view, in my point of view, I think there is still some room for the business model of crypto treasury companies to expand in the future. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in my view. So the more these crypto treasury companies come in the market, the more they buy up Bitcoin or Ethereum for that matter, the more their equity value will increase. And the more the prices of these cryptos will increase in the future. So I don't have any more questions for you, but I think it's a topic that I think we can dissect a lot further in terms of the science of how traditional balance sheets can be enhanced by these products. But if you have anything else to add, please feel free to add.
Yeah, no, I just want to maybe mention, I feel like Saylor has created kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where he created a situation where Bitcoin prices go up, and by virtue of that, it gets more attention. Companies like Base are bringing that attention to retail users. Right? And if retail users come on and we believe like the world's coming on chain, then they would be exposed to Ethereum, and they would be exposed to Bitcoin and all the other like digital assets that are coming on board. And that kickstarts a kind of unstoppable momentum where more and more people get on chain, the world gets on chain, and you kind of like...
You touched upon a topic that I think I want to raise as an additional question or point to consider. And I just listened to Tom Lee last night, and he mentioned that the retail market always wins. So it wasn't Tom Lee. It was Pompiano, and he said that the retail market will always win. And the example that he raised was GameStop. GameStop share price was pumped up all the way by the retail market. Not least because the retail market was basically pissed off at the bankers, at the institutional investors, and so the institutional investors lost out in that. Now coming back to a business model like Strategy, you mentioned that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so another word for that is a legalized Ponzi scheme. So you have retail Bitcoin holders selling, obviously they have to sell. Retail Bitcoin holders selling to institutional buyers, including to strategy. On the other hand, we will have probably more retail investors buying into the ETFs. Although I think for the most part, the ETFs are institutional buyers of the underlying assets, but the retail investors will buy into the ETFs. They will buy into the shares of treasury companies. Do you think at one point the retail market will win and Michael Saylor will go down in flame? No one dares to answer that question.
No, I think you already have quite a few like retail buyers of like strategy stock, right? So I think there's already the retail play there. I don't know if you have like a backlash against MicroStrategy, right? From the retail side. I think with
why not?
I mean, but what? Yeah, I think like question is like, what is there to backlash against? Right. I think in the GameStop case, it was a little bit different because, I mean, yeah, you could argue for it, right? In the GameStop case, there was like, there was board governance and these like issues of governance and, retail trying to, push up the stock price to support, a change in management. So if there were something to happen maybe at the strategy level around governance or management, and then the retail market was unhappy with that, right? That could be one potential way that, the retail market tries to influence management or governance through buying or selling. That would be maybe that's potentially the only angle, one of the only angles.
I think the scale is much bigger in terms of Bitcoin. Like GameStop's a pretty, isolated kind of smaller cap stock where you could potentially, manipulate the market, right? For Bitcoin, you're going up against the likes of JP Morgan and BlackRock and Jane Street. So it's kind of a different ball game altogether, and it's harder to kind of engineer that scale.
And I think there's a big portion of the retail crowd that's aligned with the sort of, they're all on the number go up.
They're all believers now.
Yeah. And so there's a substantial portion, if not a majority, of the retail folks who are aligned, and they're all kind of rooting for the same thing.
So, personal question to each and every one of you before we close up the panel. Would you buy Bitcoin, or would you buy shares of MSTR, or would you do something else like buying into ETFs?
I hold ETFs and the coins themselves directly. I don't have any exposure via the treasury companies, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay.
Same here. I hold most of my Bitcoin on chain, just because there's so much you can do by all the different structures, all the different yield mechanisms. So I think that's just better for me.
Yeah, I think there's still room to run in the current cycle, right? So then the question is what do you think is going to be? What do you think is going to be like top of the pack? Is it going to be BTC? Is it going to be ETH? Is it going to be is it going to be something else? I think that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult. However, on the equity side and like on the ETF, less on the ETFs, but on the treasury company side, those are really levered plays. So it depends your risk tolerance, right? So if you believe very heavily that the current market still has a lot of room to run, and you believed that BTC was going to be top of the pack, I mean, you have several choices. You can either buy a spot, you can either buy companies that have exposure, equity companies that have exposure, or if you want to have like, 1.5x like levered position to BTC, you could buy, something like MicroStrategy, right? Or you could buy futures, right? To enhance leverage, right? So it really depends on risk tolerance.
Okay, that sounds like we can something we can wrap up with. Personally, I would go along with what Rick has as his personal strategy, buying both into the ETF and directly into the cryptos themselves. Basically, just Bitcoin and ETH, of course. So thank you guys for enduring through a round of very difficult questions that you had to hesitate to answer. And it looks like we have to go to lunch now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for Mr. Ben, Mr. Nicholas, Mr. Rick, and also our amazing moderator, Mr. Johan. Thank you so much for coming with us today with H Vietnam 2025, and we have more sharing for all of you, more information for all of you in our H Vietnam 2025 and the next year. Thank you so much for coming here with us today with all our guests. Thank you for all the delegates, VIP guests, our experts. Please come in here, all of you. Take a picture with us to keep this moment and start our amazing event, H Vietnam 2025. So Miss Queen Yan, Mr. Chon, and also all of the members who've still been here with us, please come to the stage. Và xin được mời tất cả các đại diện vẫn còn ngồi đây với chúng tôi. Mời tất cả các anh chị chúng ta có thể tiến đến khu vực này để cùng chụp một tấm hình trước khi rời khỏi khán phòng và đến với thời gian nghỉ trưa, cũng như sẽ gặp lại với chúng tôi trong những session của buổi chiều hôm nay ạ. Xin mời quý vị. Okay, so our expert. So we need a camera here, please. Dạ, xin được mời các anh photo, chúng ta có thể di chuyển và tiến vào khu vực này ạ. Dạ. Ok chưa ạ? Nếu mà ok thì mình có thể giơ một ngón tay để MC trên này cho hiệu lệnh ạ. Ok chưa ạ? Dạ rồi, ok chưa anh? Okay, just wait for a second, please. Thank you so much, our experts today. Và mong rằng tôi sẽ được đón chào sự góp mặt và cũng như tham gia giao lưu, chia sẻ nhiều hơn nữa của toàn thể quý vị trong những session tiếp theo của ngày hôm nay và ngày mai. Và xin được cảm ơn sự tham dự của toàn thể quý vị ạ. Một lần nữa thì chúng tôi xin được thay mặt cho ban tổ chức của H Vietnam 2025 cũng như tất cả những thành viên góp mặt trong chương trình lần này, sự kiện đặc biệt lần này. Xin chúc quý vị thật nhiều những chuyến hành trình tuyệt vời và cũng như khai phá những tiềm năng mới với Ethereum và blockchain cũng như là các token mà chúng tôi mang đến những sự chia sẻ với các đối tác góp mặt trong sự kiện này mang tính chất quốc tế. Xin được cảm ơn tất cả quý vị rất nhiều. And once again, thank you for coming with us. So we hope all of you have a connection from all the company and also in all market with token, blockchain, and moreover with Ethereum. Thank you so much for coming here, and we hope you have a such a great event, H Vietnam 2025. Thank you. See you today afternoon.